A lot of the time, people tell me that my taste is very eclectic and strange, and it's almost impossible to tell whether I'm going to like something or not before I go to see it. And sometimes this results in me liking things that literally no one else did, or hating things that literally everybody else loved. And so, when I give my opinion on The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim, I think it's going to be in that category. I think it's probably going to be an opinion that very few, if no, no one shares, but I always try to be honest with you guys. So, what did I think of Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim? I thought it was really good, honestly. I thought it was excellent, and I would personally recommend seeing it, which may not be what you were expecting. Because there's been a lot of hate towards this movie. There's been a lot of pushback. A lot of people have said it looks bad. But I would say that's not the case at all. And we will talk about that. But overall, I think it's a very solid movie. The animation's beautiful. The music's great. It makes a lot of homages to Peter Jackson movies. Not the Hobbit trilogy, but like the older ones. It's really cool to go to Middle Earth again, to see kind of some new lore that's not just set during the War of the Ring or the Hobbit. We got lots of cool characters. Like I said, the animation looks great. I like the story. It's just, if you wanted a Lord of the Rings anime movie, it delivered. It delivered on a Lord of the Rings anime movie. It didn't lie to me. It wasn't anything it didn't say it was going to be. So I'll give it credit for that. But overall, I really like this movie. And I would recommend going to see it if you're a Lord of the Rings fan or an anime fan or anything like that. But your mileage may vary. Once again, I feel like I'm going to have kind of an outlier opinion on this one. So, Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim is an anime Lord of the Rings movie, which I admit when I first heard of that, I'm like, you know what? That sounds like a good idea. Because there's lots of fantasy anime, Goblin Slayer, Berserk, to name just a couple of them, and it's a genre a medium that's very familiar with sword and sorcery, high fantasy, elves, dwarves, wizards, orcs, that kind of thing. So why not do a Lord of the Rings anime movie? I mean, if you can do something like Heroic Legend of Arslan, how far off is Lord of the Rings? So I was intrigued by it, and when the first images started to come out, I admit I was cautiously optimistic towards this film. The animation looked good. The people actually looked like characters that would be in a Tolkien story. There wasn't like a ton of like forced diversity or people with weird hair colors or any of that stuff. It looked like a legitimate Tolkien production. But a lot of people, I think, were very hesitant or very negative towards this movie because it has a female main character. So this is something I do notice. I find sometimes people get a little overly sensitive about calling things woke, to the point where they will just say anything is woke, even if I would argue it really isn't. I find the area that this really strongly manifests is whenever there's a female main character. If there's a female main character in anything, I feel like people are so battered from just having girl boss main characters and just really insufferable ones that if there's any female main character, they immediately just freak out over it and say the thing is going to be feminist, it's going to be woke, it's going to be garbage. You should only have male main characters. There can't be female main characters in anything. And I think that was kind of the knee jerk reaction to this when we found out that the main character was going to be Helm Hammerhand's daughter. I think a lot of people didn't like that. They thought that this was going to be like a feminist movie, that they were going to make Lord of the Rings woke and stuff like that. And I understand that, but once again, I just feel sometimes it does really go too far, and to the point where it does kind of get the creepy levels of just hating women. And I don't mean to be that guy, but I'm sure you know what I mean. But no, I did not find this movie particularly woke, despite having a female main character. I guess the most woke thing about it is at the end she decides to not get married and leaves the throne in the hands of her cousin and goes off into the sunset to go hang out with Gandalf. That's like the most woke thing, I guess, about this movie. So there's this concept within Rohan called of the Shield Maiden, the female warrior. Now, it should be noted that the Shield Maiden, and they make this very clear in the movie, is the idea that the women of Rohan, after, that's important, after the men have been killed and their country's in ruin, will take up arms to fight. The concept, there was a time where they were facing an invasion, the army got wiped out, and the women came together and formed their own group, the Shield Maidens, and they were able to push out the invaders. That is not, however, the norm, and that doesn't seem to be like, it's not asserted in the film as being superior or anything. It's just the idea that Rohan, the women of Rohan, are tough and they're willing to fight and die for their country should the need require it. And I don't really get why that's particularly objectionable or bad or anything. The movie really doesn't go too much into subverting gender roles or stuff like that. Like, I guess Hera, who's the main character, is, I don't even know how much of a badass she is. Her maid servant, who's left over from like the previous group of Shield Maidens, and she's a badass. But it's not as if this film doesn't have like lots of testosterone and the T levels aren't off the scale. I mean, we have Helm Hammerhand, arguably the biggest Chad who's ever lived in the Tolkien universe. A guy who in this movie, he fights an Oliphant with his hammer. He just charges it and starts fighting it. He takes literally like 6 or 7 arrows and like he heals from that. He fights like fucking Godfrey from Elden Ring. Like, he just kills people with his bare hands. He gets into like a fist fight with a troll at one point. He's just like a massive badass. His 2 sons are both badasses. There's lots of cool male characters in this. Once again, Hera just kind of has to take up the position after her family gets wiped out. Now, is her father like arrogant and a hothead, and a lot of what happens leads to his downfall? Yeah, I'd say that was probably the case, but is that really like a feminist point? I mean, that's just kind of what his character is. His character is a Giga Chad, and he just likes to solve everything by bashing it in with his hammer. And he's very good at that, and 9 times out of 10 that worked. It just so happened that this was the one time. So I don't really get the whole feminist thing. I guess like maybe people are saying that like Wolf the bad guy is some sort of like incel loser who is mad that like Hera didn't marry him and he's going on his like revenge spree. I didn't really get that impression at all. I got it, his motivation was more just about his inability to let go of the past, his inability to just take the W, and his need to just humiliate and cause all those around him who he feels wronged them to suffer. He just seems like a villain. Like, I don't. Once again, not everything has to be political. I don't think this film made any like particularly strong political points to it. Maybe it's because Helm says like to his daughter, "You could rule the world. I love you. You're my pride and joy." Oh no, a father says that he loves his daughter and he's proud of her and he believes in her. And I guess that the guy she abdicates the throne in favor of at the end is like, you should have been queen because of like your achievements. And she's like, no, that's just not me. That's not the life I was destined for. So I don't know. I guess that's woke and we're supposed to hate it and we're supposed to not watch the movie because it has a female main character. So that's my opinion on it. That being said, there's no like forced diversity in this. It's kind of surreal. The Rohirrim are supposed to be Anglo-Saxons, but kind of with an Indo-European bent. So they have like they're horse lords. So they're like, I don't know if they're semi-nomadic or whatever, but their culture is very much based around is a pastoral culture. And they look like Anglo-Saxons. Everybody's white. Most of them look like Aryan Supermen. Hera, I will say, if nothing else, is really, really beautiful. Like she is absolutely gorgeous. Red hair, blue eyes, or does she have green eyes? I can't actually. Maybe they're green. But anyways, she's really beautiful. Helm is a Giga Chad, Aryan Superman. His children are. One of them even has the fashy haircut. There's no like weird forced diversity into it. The Dunlings are a bit darker, but I mean that was the case in Tolkien's work. So it's so weird to just not see like a bunch of black people or Indians or whatever inserted. I guess there's some people from the Middle East because they hire some southern mercenaries because they wanted to bring in Oliphants because Oliphants are awesome and they should just be in everything. But no, there's no inappropriate random forced diversity. It's really weird. None of like the female characters wear really weird like super male clothing or dye their hair or have odd piercings. It's kind of like I don't. It's like the least woke movie I've seen in a while. So maybe let's just briefly go through what the plot of the movie is. So this takes place during the appendices of Tolkien's work. This is the tale of Helm Hammerhand and his family and how the first line of Rohirrim kings went extinct and was succeeded by the second line of kings. Now, in Tolkien's work, my understanding is Hera, who doesn't have a name, winds up taking the throne, and her son inherits, and that's where the second line of kings comes from. This is different in that she does not take the throne. She abdicates in favor of her cousin, who starts the second line of kings. So the film opens with Hera going on a ride. We get to see her go with an eagle. She's, the kind of a bit tomboy. I guess you could say she's tomboyish, but she dresses quite feminine. And she has like long hair and she doesn't have weird piercings or tattoos or self mutilations. So I don't know. I guess she's a tomboy though. But anyway, so she goes out and likes to ride around on a horse, and she gets to see one of the eagles, and she goes back home because her father is having a meeting, and that's because a lord who he tends to be on bad terms with, who's related to the Dunlendings, has called a meeting. So the guy comes there and he just starts shit talking Helm Hammerhand, which is not something that you should do. And he just basically says that he's like a loser. There's been a proposal to marry Hera to a prince of Gondor to re-cement their alliance. The guy just talks mad amounts of shit to Helm and says like, "Oh, you're sucking up to Gondor. We have to be our own independent kingdom. You want to make us their vassal and stuff like that." And his son Wolf, who kind of turns out to be the big bad of this movie, obviously is in love with Hera because they used to be friends when they were younger. And he's like, "Just marry me, and then I can be the next king, and then everything will like turn out great, and we'll have this strong, independent Rohan and stuff like that." And Helm just tells him to fuck off. He just says, "It's none of your business who my daughter marries. I didn't want to have this meeting. You came here and you're insulting me." And then he just starts like basically saying like his daughter's like a whore and she's nasty and no one would want her and stuff like that. And then Helm's just like, "Okay, you and me outside right now." So they go outside, and the Dick Lord like punches Helm multiple times, and Helm is just like, "Is that all you got?" So then he just does like one haymaker and smashes the guy's face in, and he dies. And Helm's response is like, "You saw that? That guy went down with one shot. I didn't mean to kill him. I didn't realize he was that much of a pussy." So Wolf tries to kill Helm Hammerhand, but Helm Hammerhand just beats the shit out of him with his bare hands, despite Wolf being armed. And he exiles Wolf, and Wolf swears his revenge that he's going to come back and he's going to kill Helm. He's going to kill Hera for not marrying him, and he's going to make Rohan pay for the death of his father, who died because he was retarded and decided to challenge a Giga Chad to a fist fight when he was this like fat loser who was completely out of shape. And he thought he could step up to literally Godfrey, the first Elden Lord. So we cut ahead a couple of years, and we have Hera riding around with her cousin, and we find that come across an Oliphant that's just running around with no driver. So we have kind of a cool scene where they try to fight it. We have another cool Tolkien reference where Hera leads the Oliphant into the forest, and she manages to wake up one of the Watchers in the water, and the Watcher in the water eats the Oliphant by swallowing it whole, which was a cool scene. So she gets kidnapped because she gets ambushed from behind while this is happening, and she gets taken to Isengard, which is being occupied and rebuilt. Somehow they've gotten together like a bunch of Dunlendings and the hill tribes and stuff like that, and they've all sworn fealty to one lord, who is obviously Wolf. And Wolf's like, "Look, you can still save your people if you marry me." And she's like, I don't really want to marry you. And he's like, "Fuck you, bitch." And then he like cuts her on the cheek and he just starts kind of raging. Her shield maiden bodyguard, lady in waiting, comes in and saves her in alliance with her cousin, and they manage to make it back and tell Helm that about what's going on. Now Helm is super arrogant and he's just like, "Look, this guy's an F slur, he's a pussy. I'm just gonna go out and beat his head in with my hammer." And that's the strategy. We don't need any other strategy. And Hera's like, "Look, they've got Oliphants, they've got like mercenaries, they have some kind of like 4D chess plan going on, Dad. I think you should be a little more cautious about this." Their cousin's like, "Yeah, we should maybe fall back and get reinforcements and like try to plan this out better." And he's like, "No, I'm a Chad and I'm gonna fight this royal. You and me, without more help from England, can fight this royal battle." So they go out and charge the Dunlending army. Hera figures out part of the way through because of a seal that she saw on a letter on Wolf's table that one of the lords who's supposed to be having the flanks has double crossed them, and she manages to get the village evacuated. Helm just charges into the Dunlendings and he just starts kicking ass. His immediate response is that he's going to go and fight Wolf. He's going to kill all the officers in single combat because he's Helm Hammerhand, and that's just how he rolls. But yeah, the Oliphants come in, so we get some cool scenes of them killing them. Like I said, Helm just goes up and starts wailing on one with his hammer. One of his sons like jumps on top of one and like starts hacking his head off. And we just get some awesome chaotic battle scenes. Eventually, what winds up happening, though, is Helm has to withdraw when it becomes clear that he's outmatched and outmaneuvered, and that his capital has gotten burned down, has been captured and destroyed. I think what winds up happening is Hera gets them to light the city on fire after they retreat to deny it to Wolf and his army. So, her older brother, after he kills an Oliphant, gets shot from behind with an arrow and he dies. Her other brother is still alive. Helm runs out and he gets shot with like 7 arrows. He doesn't care though. It just keeps yelling, but they manage to get him in and run away. Her other brother foolishly did not swap out his horse for a younger one. So his horse just runs out of stamina and basically gives out. So he gets surrounded and captured. Hera manages to lead the remainder of the Rohirrim and civilian population to Helm's Deep. At the moment, it's called the Hornburg. It gets renamed Helm's Deep at the end of the movie. I think the Hornburg refers specifically to the Citadel, and the entire valley is called Helm's Deep. So she manages to withdraw successfully to Helm's Deep, and they manage to fortify it and dig in. Wolf shows up, and Helm offers to trade himself for his son. Wolf says, "No, I want to kill everybody because I'm a gamer." So he slits the throat of Helm's second son and just decides that they're going to siege it. Now, because Wolf is so obsessed with revenge, despite the fact that he's basically won at this point, Helm is like presumably fatally wounded. His two sons are dead. His enemies are broken and scattered to the wind. He could probably do whatever he wants at this point in time. But what he really wants more than anything else is to make Hera pay, to humiliate Helm, to shit on his legacy, to achieve total victory. And this is a very Tolkien-esque villain thing. Because one of the core themes of Tolkien's work is that ultimately evil is extremely petty. It's not cool. It's not edgy. It's not like this fascinating thing that needs to be looked up to. It's just really lame and petty, and it's based on the lowest of human emotions. In this case, it's just jealousy, pride, and revenge. Is basically what Wolf is after. So the Rohirrim settle in for the siege. They don't have very much food at the Hornburg, so it's really just kind of a question of who's going to lose out first. It is winter time. Both sides don't have much food or fuel, and they're just kind of trying to wait each other out. Wolf is technically sieging them, but he's probably taking as many losses just from like dysentery and starvation and exposure and stuff like that, more so than really the Rohirrim are. And he starts to build this giant siege tower that's going to enable him to take the castle. The whole siege is very ruinous for Wolf because he's not consolidating power. He's not getting the various nobles to come and acknowledge him as the new king and to swear fealty to him and trying to set up his new kingdom. He's just spending all of his time sitting outside of a castle, and he has to pay his men during this time, so it's draining whatever resources he has, and it's just a complete and total disaster and shit show. But he just can't not do it. So as time goes on, it seems that all hope has been lost. One day, so Helm is just kind of in a coma because he's depressed because it seems like everything he worked for has fallen apart. However, he wakes up one day and disappears. Around this time, a wraith begins to haunt the Dunlending camp. Every night, dozens of men are found with their heads bashed open, torn apart by some sort of wild beast. Eventually, we find out that that wild beast is actually Helm. And he doesn't really know what else to do, so he's just gone all Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, and he's just going into the camp and just beating people to death with his bare hands. Just I don't think he's wearing a shirt, he just beats the shit out of people. And I mean, people say like that's goofy, that's over the top, but to me that's alpha. That's alpha as fuck. And I like that. So Hera gets trapped in the secret passage and she winds up getting out. We get kind of a cameo of the main series plot in that the orcs are there gathering rings from among the dead, obviously as part of looking for the one ring. There's a troll with them, I think, and Helm, being such a Chad, gets into a fist fight with the troll. He's doing okay, but Hera has to kind of save him because it's a fucking troll and you can't really kill a troll with your hands. But she stabs it in the face and it dies. They manage to run through the camp and get back to the fortress. The door is frozen shut, but Helm, in like Hercules fashion, manages to open it enough for his daughter to go through. He then just goes, "Look, it's up to you to save our people. Me, I'm gonna take this Essler down." So he stands up on the bridge, and just dozens of Dunlendings come up, and he just beats them all to death with his bare hands. Eventually, the blizzard gets so bad they have to pull off, and the next morning he's standing there, frozen. He didn't follow his needs at any point. He died as he lived, as a stone cold badass. So things at this point in time seem to be basically completely and totally hopeless. The Rohirrim are screwed. There's really no way to get out. The siege tower is getting taller by the day. So Hera decides that she's going to do something crazy. So she goes up, climbs up the mountain next to Helm's Deep, and there's a nest of one of the giant eagles there. And she begs the eagle for its help, and she gives it her father's hammer and horn and asks to take it to her cousin. The Eagle Eye, who I think is impressed by her courage, just agrees to do that and takes it to her. Meanwhile, Hera decides that she's going to make a last stand. There's this legend of like a bride who was engaged to the commander of the fortress, and she died the night before of a horrible illness, and her wedding gown is like this cursed artifact. So Hera decides to put it on as kind of like a fuck you to Wolf in reference to their almost engagement, and she gets the rest of her people to go through the passage while her and the soldiers stay behind. So the siege tower comes down. She rides out onto it and challenges Wolf to single combat. Wolf is not that good a fighter, so she manages to beat him. They had agreed the terms of the fight were that if she won, he would leave. And if he won, then he would prove once and for all that he had personally had the strength to defeat the current dynasty. After he loses, he like pulls a dagger and tries to kill her. His general is like disgusted by him and just says that he's like an honorless, faithless coward, and it's a shame, like he should never have served him because he's such a scumbag. He won't keep to his word, and stuff like that. And so Wolf just has a freak out and stabs him because the guy dared to make fun of him. So just when the army seems to be surging forward, all hope seems lost. But as with in Two Towers, her cousin shows up with a bunch of Rohirrim. They charge down the mountainside and just slaughter the Dunlendings. They're gonna kill them to the last men, but Hera begs them to let them go, that there's been enough death and there's been enough war, to which she agrees. He comes bearing the helm and horn of Helm Hammerhand, and that just scares them and causes them to run away. So the film ends with her cousin being crowned king in her stead as she abdicates and decides to go off on her adventures. Saruman the wizard shows up and is taking possession of Isengard. They used archival voice footage for Christopher Lee, so it's kind of cool to see Christopher Lee in this movie, even if he's long dead. And she gets an invite from Gandalf to go meet him and talk to him about the orcs that were looking for the rings, and that brings the movie to an end. So, is it woke? Is it feminist? Is it girl power? I don't know. I just think it's a story. Like, I think it's just a mythic story. Lots of mythic stories will have, like, the daughter of a king or the wife of a hero or something who will go and do something. Like, I don't really get, like, are we just supposed to have no stories with female characters? Like, the film doesn't shit on men. It doesn't say women are better than men. It doesn't. Once again, she takes over after her father and brothers die, bravely fighting for their country. Well, her father is kind of an arrogant hothead. That's just kind of his personality. He's also a great man and a great warrior who wants what's best for his people. He's just kind of arrogant and rage-filled, and part of that is just because of the fact that if you're as big a Chad as Helm Hammerhand, you're probably going to get arrogant. I mean, if you can fight trolls with your bare hands, like, what is there in the world that you can fear? Honestly, he could probably beat the Numenorian Superman Aragorn in a wrestling match. That's how tough he is. But no, I thought the movie was really good. I thought it was a cool story. The set pieces were cool. It's nice to see it's something else Tolkien based that has some kind of original lore and stuff like that. I just think it's a very good story. It comes across very much as a myth or legend in the style that Tolkien liked to write in. So I'd say it's a good movie. I think it's a faithful Tolkien adaptation, and I definitely recommend watching it. So that's my opinion. God bless everybody, and lots more great content to come.